got touted into this by Jeffrey last night. He said, what could you do? One of the things that I think probably people come across is that they want to take a picture for their blog to make it just something a little bit more interesting, a visual stimulus. So they'll go to Creative Commons or something like that, and generally the pictures on there are pretty good anyway. But if you've got some stuff that you've taken your own, what I thought we could do is just go through sort of 10 very quick tips of basic things to do with images or to do with logos that would just help you give them a bit more punch, make them stand out a bit more, or just make them perfectly decent rather than being horrific, which some of them may be. So the first thing is I've got a picture here that goes back a fair while, and it's basically got the problem of levels. So if you've got an image that's very poorly balanced, if you just press Command and L, I'll give you all these on a sheet of paper at the end so that you can stick them on the show notes, Todd. But you can see there that we've got a basic histogram, which is not good. I mean, that should really be the other way up. We want a big curve with a high contrast in the middle. If we just use the contrast very basically, you can see there that we immediately start to lift the image, and we don't burn out the hills too badly at the back. So that's one way of doing it. The other way that we can do it is to come over here and we can grab ourselves the dodge and burn tool. Now the dodge tool is the one that helps you lighten it, and if we raise the size of the brush and just go up here and look at shadows only, because that's all we want to lift. We don't want to mess with anything that's over the back here, and then just start to paint. I can then start to raise the foreground a little bit, but not start touching the background a bit. So I've still got that nice highlight on the back there, and I've got the same effect without ruining the backside as well. So that's one. That's levels and contrast. Those are the two real areas that you can do. Most of the photos that you have will improve significantly by just using the auto tone or auto levels function that's in Photoshop. Everything I'm showing you today, by the way, you can do back in Photoshop 7. It's that far. It's that old. None of this stuff is like you must have Photoshop 5 to get it. All of the Elements stuff that have been around since I think Elements 4 or 3, they still do all of this as well. Next one is cropping. There's a picture of my gorgeous daughter who was born the day I was on here last time. She's nearly 2 now, though. And cropping is dead simple. Don't be afraid to get really big crops going. The crop tool is superb because once you've drawn it out, what it does is it gives you this nice little rule of thirds thing in CS5 if you've got that one. If you haven't, don't worry. But just start to think about where you can move it, and it dims the rest of the image for you. So you can start to mess around and say, right, well, where do I actually want to take this crop? With this image, I want something that's say enough 4:3, something like that in ratio, and I can come right in and just say, right, well, I don't need a rear, I don't need a forehead, all I need that, double click it, and I've got a much more interesting crop straight away. I could probably even take a little bit more off that one. If you look at this one, classic fault on an image, I didn't take this one, I'm pleased to say, and it's just the fact that it's unbalanced. So what we've got here is very tight crop on the far side with the hood, and a great big gap on this side. Come over here and grab the left-hand side, which is the one that we want to keep. Drag it out so that it's kind of equivalent. There we go. And then again, we can look here, we see we've got the rule of thirds. So what we'd like to do is maybe bring that top one down so that the eyes are on the 3rd point line here. And that gives us a nice little effect. Crop it. There we go. We could even do the same gap at the top as we've done at the sides if we wanted, just to get a bit more punch out of the image. Cropping is another one that's going to give you an awful lot more impact depending on where you crop and how you crop, and it also then gives you a lot more ability to highlight certain regions. There's one that I cropped a little bit earlier on. You can see there again, I've got the eye here on the 1/3 line, which is the rule of thirds rule, and also that the rule of thirds then is applied across the eyes horizontally as well. So that gives a nice tight crop. All of this stuff with the hair and the hat and that kind of stuff isn't important. What we want is the girl's features. The other thing you've got is the golden ratio. This is an image that's shot in 3:5, and 3:5 means that you can make a square out of it, and then there'll be an oblong left over. And when you make a square out of that, there'll be an equivalent oblong left over again. It's the 1.618 rule. If you look at that, then what you've got that when you've got that ratio of 3:5, if you pick this, whether it's horizontal or whether it's portrait, you need to just think about putting the focus of interest around this point here, just at the top of where the square would be, and before the oblong comes into play. That's the golden area on the golden ratio. Same with logos, that kind of stuff. Next one's a great one. It's where you actually just want to correct the image. Nice picture of my son here. Again, I didn't take it. And you can see that the blinds aren't particularly level, so it's kind of pulling the eye away from what's important, which is my son Ellis. Great little tool that's always been around in Photoshop, but no one's ever used it properly, is the ruler tool. So if you come up to the eyedropper, you should find the ruler tool. There we go. And all you have to do is grab one corner of something straight, so you can use like a hedge or a bush or a road or something like that. And then you grab that and draw it out across the image. I don't know if you can see that. Have you actually seen that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I've just drawn out a straight line across the top of the louvers there. Okay, now that'll stay, don't worry about it. If I come up to image, and then I come down to image rotation and pick arbitrary, one of the things that Photoshop does for you is it takes the angle of that ruler and it suggests that that's the horizontal already. So instead of having to sit and calculate what angle it is that you want to move it by, when you open arbitrary, it'll already tell you it's 2.24 degrees counterclockwise. Click OK, and there you go. It's moved it back so that those are all perfectly horizontal. Now all I've got to do is make a copy of that, which is Command and J. That makes a duplicate down here on the right-hand side. And then if I press Command or Control and T, depending on whether you're Windows or Mac, all you have to do is hold the Shift key down while you just drag the thing out a little bit bigger. And again, worry about your cropping later on perhaps. But there we go. We've got a nice picture of my son on a perfectly straight set of louver blinds. Done. And then Command D will make it back into one layer and you can just save it.
That's next something one, I definitely need to do.
That tool is the best hidden tool in Photoshop, I'm telling you, Norbert. No one knows about it.
Whenever I take a shot of like the ocean or something like that, I always get the horizon a little off center, and off level, and my wife just does nothing but tell me about it. So I'll have to use that trick.
Yeah, no, I mean, it works well as if you're making logos and that kind of stuff and you want to bring something back to level that you've previously tilted. Just draw the line and then do the arbitrary movement and it'll come back to instantly horizontal for you. You don't have to worry, because one of the things that you'll do if you tilt a logo manually, if you hold down your Shift key, you'll get 45-degree increments of rotation or tilt. If you leave that out because you want it at a particularly jaunty angle, and then actually you go, actually, I don't really like that. I want to go back to where I was. As long as you've got something that's straight in there, the ruler tool will help you pull it back to the horizontal to start all over again. So it's kind of like a little undo tool as well, to some degree. Here we've got a picture of a girl sat in a field that I took a few years ago. And one of the things that most photos need, and this is true of anything that you take from Creative Commons, a lot of the Creative Commons stuff is not heavily touched because they want to allow you to do it yourself. So here we could really benefit from having what's called a vignette, which is like a nice ring around the girl and lose some of the outer area here. If I come up here to the top, and I'll pick myself the elliptical marquee tool, and then just draw myself an ellipse, roughly where I think I might want this vignette. There we go. So I've now got a marching ant line around her, and I press Command and J, it'll make a duplicate of that layer. However, what I forgot to do first was select inverse. It was all going so well up until that point, wasn't it? Right, I select inverse, which gives me the outer part here. That was just a right click and select inverse. Now I can do Command J, and what I've got then is a blank around the outside. Now I can either blur that and get a vignette blur, or what I could do is feather the selection so that I've now got a ridiculous amount of softness around that ring. So now when I press, that's a bit much, hang on. It was going really well for this image, wasn't it? Yeah. Let's try 50. There we go. Now when I project it, what I've actually got is I've got a nice soft area around it. If I then keep that layer selected, come up to here, and this is one of the real quick tools, come down to multiply, and again, like I said, this is in every episode of Photoshop, back to Photoshop 7. I've now got a nice circle around her. Now that's very, very dark. I don't want it quite that bad. So if I then just grab the opacity up here and pull the opacity back, and I can just sit and play with the slider until I get it to kind of where I want it to be and just think, okay, that now highlights it just nicely. And then again, Command D, and I'm back to the solid single image, and I can save that as a single JPEG. Very useful if you want to highlight things in your image for your blog. Again, same principle here. Nice big image. Grab it because I want to get the guys highlighted rather than the people at the bottom and the ball. Select the inverse. Feather it. Same principle. And then Command J. Multiply the layer. And again, well, not too bad there straight away. It's just giving that nice little bit of punch to the image and focus the eye towards the centre rather than the stuff that's around the back and around the sides. Next one, that was an image that I shot in very low light at a young girl's wedding. And it was a nice pose, if you like, but because it was so light, so little light, I've got a bit of camera shake as well. It was a spur-of-the-moment shot, not particularly brilliant. If you get a lot of these, then fear not, because I used to spend a fortune buying high-grain film so I could get this kind of look deliberately. The thing that you've got now is you've got a beautiful tool up here for image adjustment that just says, can you select it in black and white? So come down here, select the black and white, and that'll make a complete difference to the image straight away. You can get away with things that are out of focus, things that are not quite sharp enough, if you just go to black and white. In the new CS5, they give you a whole load of different filters, so you can select your contrast levels and your neutral density filters and those kind of things, or red filters, green filters, blue filters, till you find the one that you think looks just as good as everything else. I tend to use green a lot. That looks nice and neutral. And if you still don't like it, then the old trick of going back to levels again will do it, and you can just start to punch up the contrast or reduce it so you get the image that you want. Next one, dead simple. This is where you make a copy of the layer that you've got. You've got a coloured picture here, but again, it's slightly blurred. It's not particularly brilliant. What I'm going to do is make 2 layers, and then the one behind, the second one there, I'm just going to do what I did with the previous image, and I'm going to make it into black and white. Oop, where's it gone? Black and white. There we go. That'll do. And then what I'm going to do is think, well, I got the nice highlight there from the flowers, so I'll just select the eraser tool and come back, maybe change the opacity a little bit on it so I'm only 70%, and then soften the brush up a little bit perhaps so it's not particularly harsh, and then come and start just rubbing away at the flowers. And then what I can do is bring some spot colour back into the image, just to give it that little bit more interest. Don't have to bring the dress in or the skin or anything like that. Leave her in black and white, but make sure that the flowers are the highlight. And all you have to do is shrink it back down to 1 layer and away you go. This one's a good one. Sometimes you get holiday snaps and those kind of things where you've got a nice white building. This is Montmartre in Paris. And you can see that the sky is very much a similar colour. Now, that's not particularly helpful, because when you want to try and put a fake sky on something, when you try and select this using the magic tool here, you'll find that you start selecting lots of the building as well. This thing over here, channels, is very, very badly underused. But if you come over here, now I know the sky's blue on my planet, so I can get rid of the red and the green, and what that's going to do is only leave me with the blue channel, and it turns everything in the blue to white. Then when I use the channel select tool, then when I use the, where's that gone? I'm on the wrong layer. That's why it's not done it. There we go. Then when I go over here and I select on it, there we go. It picks out all of where the blue was, because the blue has all gone completely, purely and utterly white now. And then if I just hit delete, when I come back here, it keeps the selection, hit delete, and then I can make another layer under here, which is going to be my fake sky. Come up and grab the gradient tool, and then all I have to do is drag down just to the edge of the horizon, and we can again mess around with that with opacity till it looks more natural than it currently does. There we go. One fake sky. Dead easy. Next one, a lovely girl who I shot a picture of who was eating an apple. And
not much else.
With this one, what we're going to do is show you a thing called a high key effect. So what I do is make 3 layers of exactly the same image on the top here. And on the very top image, all I do is select the overlay blend mode. And what that does is it makes it very stark, so it makes all the whites very white and all the blacks very black, which isn't a problem, because what we're going to do is go down to the second layer here, and we're going to make the second layer black and white, just like we did in the previous exercise. There we go, the green filter. And you can see now straight away we've managed to get a nice contrasty effect. I can also then mess around with the opacity of each of these layers to say that I want more or less colour. So I can make it an awful lot more washed out, or I can make it an awful lot more contrasty. And I can mess with these as well for levels to make high contrast again with them. The next thing that we can do with that, though, is when we've got this high layer on the top and we want to go to a nice bit of colour again, don't forget we've made that third layer, which is now sitting underneath. So if we come to the black and white layer, get the eraser tool just in the same technique that we did before, and then start rubbing away at her hair, we can get those lovely copper tones that she's got as a natural highlight to her hair, and start to just bring that back a little bit. I did it very quickly there. But all of those highlights come out so much more prettily, and they really stand out, and we can do exactly the same thing with the apple. I've done that very quickly. We can do it a lot more carefully. There we go. And if you think that you want the lips to be back in again, there we go. So there you go. There's 10 quick effects for enhancing your photos and put them in your blog.
You can tell that you've used Photoshop for a few years.
Yeah, sort of. Well, I had 7. That was my first ever version, was Photoshop 7, which goes back, God, I don't know, 10 years. Would that be about right? 10
Wow.
years.
Yeah, probably.
But the silly thing is, though, Todd, you're saying that about Photoshop, and everyone goes, oh, Photoshop's cheating. Everything I've shown you today, I used to do in a darkroom. There is nothing here that I didn't do in a darkroom 20 years ago.
That's amazing.
It just takes me 22 minutes now instead of about 10 weeks.
Yeah, I really enjoy using Photoshop. I have CS2. I need to get an updated version, but it's amazing to be able to do a lot of different things, a lot of different functionality. I just put together an ad for a local newspaper, for a local venue, where we had a black and white picture, and I actually colorized some of the picture to make it look a little bit, stand it out a little bit more. So I like with this girl, highlighting the apple, highlighting the lips, highlighting the hair, and just it makes it stand out. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that you've got to realise is that you know, I've used photos this evening because I'm a photographer, but if you're talking about doing logos and those kind of things, there's no reason that you can't use exactly the same techniques on layers in logos. Take an existing logo, blur it, and you can get a lot of stuff that's stock image, stuff that's given away free on Creative Commons. Use some of the filters and some of the artistic filters to start using the cutout or the brush tools, those kind of things, to make them look completely different. And if you look at my my website, bageltechnews.com, there's a whole load of stuff in there, pictures of bagels and that kind of thing that I've taken over the years. And all I've done is put them through some of the processes just to stylise them and make them look just a little bit different. But they all started as photographs. You know, don't start going out and reinventing the wheel, and don't start paying people like me for horrifically expensive pictures of things. Just go and take a picture of them, or go and find something on the line, because there's plenty of stuff out there that they don't mind you using.